This is a reading from the sermons of St. Alphonsus, Liguori, for all the Sundays of the year. Sermon 27, for the 6th Sunday after Pentecost, or the Sunday within the octave of the Ascension, on human respect. Whosoever killeth you will think that he doth a service to God. John chapter 16, verse 2. In exhorting his disciples to be faithful to him under the persecutions which they were to endure, the Saviour said, Yea, the hour cometh that whosoever killeth you will think that he doth a service to God. Thus, the enemies of the faith believed that in putting Christians to death they did a service to God. It is thus that many Christians of the present day act. They kill their own souls by losing the grace of God through human respect and to please worldly friends. Oh, how many souls has human respect, that great enemy of our salvation, sent to hell? I shall speak on this subject today, that if you wish to serve God and save your souls, you may guard as much as possible against human respect. In the first point, I will show the importance of not being influenced by human respect, and in the second, I will point out the means by which this vice may be overcome. First point, on the importance of not being influenced by human respect. Woe to the world because of scandals. Matthew chapter 18, verse 7. Jesus Christ has said that through the scandals of the wicked, many souls fall into hell. But how is it possible to live in the midst of the world and not to take scandal? This is impossible. To avoid taking scandal, St. Paul says, we should leave this world. Otherwise, you must needs go out of this world. 1 Corinthians chapter 5, verse 10. But it is in our power to avoid familiarity with scandalous sinners. Hence the apostle adds, But now I have written to you not to keep company with such a one, not as much as to eat. Chapter 5, verse 11. We should beware of contracting an intimacy with such sinners, for should we be united with them in the bonds of friendship, we shall feel an unwillingness to oppose their bad practices and bad counsels. Thus, through human respect and the fear of contradicting them, we will imitate their example and lose the friendship of God. Such lovers of the world not only glory in their own iniquities, they rejoice in the most wicked things. Proverbs chapter 2, verse 14. But what is worse, they wish to have companions and ridicule all who endeavor to live like true Christians and to avoid the dangers of offending God. This is a sin which is very displeasing to God and which he forbids in a particular manner. Despise not a man that turneth away from sin, nor reproach him therewith. Ecclesiastes chapter 8, verse 6. Despise not those who keep at a distance from sin, and seek not to draw them to evil by your reproaches and irregularities. The Lord declares that, for those who throw ridicule on the virtuous, chastisements are prepared in this and in the next life. Judgments are prepared for scorners, and striking hammers for the bodies of fools. Proverbs chapter 19, verse 29. They mock the servants of God, and he shall mock them for all eternity. But the Lord shall laugh them to scorn, and they shall fall after this without honor, and be a reproach among the dead forever. Wisdom chapter 4, verse 18. They endeavor to make the saints contemptible in the eyes of the world, and God shall make them die without honor, and shall send them to hell, to suffer eternal ignominy among the damned. Not only to offend God, but also to endeavor to make others offend him is truly an enormous excess of wickedness. This execrable intention arises from a conviction that there are many weak and pusillanimous souls who, to escape derision and contempt, abandon the practice of virtue and give themselves up to a life of sin. After his conversion to God, St. Augustine wept for having associated with those ministers of Lucifer, and confessed that he felt ashamed not to be as wicked and as shameless as they were. Pudebat me, says the saint, esse pudentem. How many, to avoid the scoffs of wicked friends, have been induced to imitate their wickedness. Behold the saint. These impious scoffers will say, Get me a piece of his garment, I will preserve it as a relic. He ought to go into the desert. Why does he not become a monk? How many also, when they receive an insult, resolve to take revenge, not so much through passion as to escape the reputation of being cowards? How many are there who, after having inadvertently given expression to a scandalous maxim, neglect to retract it, as they are bound to do, through fear of losing the esteem of others? How many, because they are afraid of forfeiting the favor of a friend, sell their souls to the devil? They imitate the conduct of Pilate, who, through the apprehension of losing the friendship of Caesar, condemned Jesus Christ to death. Be attentive. Brethren, if we wish to save our souls, we must overcome human respect and bear the little confusion which may arise from the scoffs of the enemies of the cross of Jesus Christ. For there is a shame that bringeth sin, and there is a shame that bringeth glory and grace. Ecclesiastes chapter 4, verse 25. If we do not suffer this confusion with patience, it will lead us into the pit of sin. But if we submit to it for God's sake, it will obtain for us the divine grace here and great glory hereafter. As, says St. Gregory, bashfulness is laudable in evil, so it is reprehensible in good. Homily 10 in Ezek. But some of you will say, I attend to my own affairs. I wish to save my soul. Why then should I be persecuted? But there is no remedy. It is impossible to serve God and not be persecuted. The wicked loathe them that are in the right way. Proverbs 29, verse 27. Sinners cannot bear the sight of the man who lives according to the gospel, because his life is a continual censure on their disorderly conduct. And therefore they say, let us lie in wait for the just, because he is not for our turn, and he is contrary to our doings, and upbraideth us with transgressions of the law. Wisdom chapter 2, verse 12. The proud man, who seeks revenge for every insult which he receives, would wish that all should avenge the offenses that may be offered to him. The avaricious, who grow rich by injustice, wish that all should imitate their fraudulent practices. The drunkard wishes to see others indulge like himself in intoxication. The immoral, who boast of their impurities and can scarcely utter a word which does not savor of obscenity, desire that all should act and speak as they do. And those who do not imitate their conduct, they regard as mean, clownish, and intractable, as men without honor and without education. They are of the world, therefore of the world they speak. 1 John chapter 4, verse 5. Worldlings can speak no other language than that of the world. Oh, how great is their poverty and blindness. Sin has blinded them, and therefore they speak so profanely. These things they thought, and were deceived, for their own malice blinded them. Wisdom chapter 2, verse 21. But I say again that there is no remedy. All, as St. Paul says, who wish to live in union with Jesus Christ must be persecuted by the world. And all that will live godly in Christ shall suffer persecution. 2 Timothy chapter 3, verse 12. All the saints have been persecuted. You say, I do not injure anyone. Why then am I not left in peace? What evil have the saints, and particularly the martyrs, done? They were full of charity. They loved all and labored to do good to all. And how have they been treated by the world? They have been flayed alive. They have been tortured with red-hot plates of iron, and have been put to death in a most cruel manner. And whom has Jesus Christ, the Saint of Saints, injured? He consoled all. He healed all. Virtue went out from him and healed all. Luke chapter 6, verse 19. And how has the world treated him? It has persecuted him, so as to make him die through pain on the infamous gibbet of the cross. This happens because the maxims of the world are diametrically opposed to the maxims of Jesus Christ. What the world esteems, Jesus Christ regards as folly, for the wisdom of this world is foolishness with God. 1 Corinthians chapter 3, verse 19. And what is foolish in the eyes of the world, that is, crosses, sickness, contempt, and ignominies, Jesus Christ holds in great estimation. For the word of the cross to them indeed that perish is foolishness. 1 Corinthians chapter 1, verse 18. How, says St. Cyprian, can a man think himself to be a Christian when he is afraid to be a Christian? Christianum se putat si Christianum esse veritur. Sermon 5 de Lapsis. If we are Christians, let us show that we are Christians in name and in truth. For if we are ashamed of Jesus Christ, he will be ashamed of us, and cannot give us a place on his right hand on the last day. For he that shall be ashamed of me and my words of him, the Son of Man, shall be ashamed when he shall come in his majesty. Luke chapter 9, verse 26. On the day of judgment he shall say, You have been ashamed of me on earth. I am now ashamed to see you with me in paradise. Begone, accursed souls, go into hell to meet your companions who have been ashamed of me. But mark the words, he that shall be ashamed of me and of my words. St. Augustine says that some are ashamed to deny Jesus Christ, but do not blush to deny the maxims of Jesus Christ. Erubescunt negare Christum, et non erubescunt negare verba Christi. Sermone 98. But you may tell me that if you say you cannot do such an act because it is contrary to the gospel, your friends will turn you into ridicule and will call you a hypocrite. Then, says St. John Chrysostom, you will not suffer to be treated with derision by a companion, and you are content to be hated by God? Non visa conservo derideri, sed odio aberia Deo tuo. Homily 91 in Act 19. The apostle who gloried in being a follower of Christ said, "The world is crucified to me, and I to the world." Galatians chapter 6, verse 14. As I am a person crucified to the world, an object of its scoffs and injustice, so the world is to me an object of contempt and abomination. It is necessary to be convinced that if we do not trample on the world will trample on our souls. But what is the world and all its goods? All that is in the world is the concupiscence of the flesh, and the concupiscence of the eyes, and the pride of life. 1 John chapter 2, verse 16. To what are all the goods of this earth reduced? To riches, which are but dung, to honors, which are only smoke, and to carnal pleasures. But what shall all these profit us if we lose our souls? What doth it profit a man if he gain the whole world, and suffer the loss of his own soul? Matthew chapter 16, verse 26. He that loves God and wishes to save his soul must despise the world and all human respect, and to do this, everyone must offer violence to himself. St. Mary Magdalene had to do great violence to herself in order to overcome human respect and the murmurings and scoffs of the world. When in the presence of so many persons, she cast herself at the feet of Jesus Christ to wash them with her tears and dry them with her hair. But she thus became a saint, and merited from Jesus Christ pardon of her sins, and praise for her great love. Many sins are forgiven her because she hath loved much. Luke chapter 7, verse 47. One day, as St. Francis Borgia carried to certain prisoners a vessel of broth under his cloak, he met his son, mounted on a fine horse and accompanied by several noblemen. The saint felt ashamed to show what he carried under his cloak. But what did he do in order to conquer human respect? He took the vessel of broth, placed it on his head, and thus showed his contempt for the world. Jesus Christ, our head and master, when nailed to the cross, was mocked by the soldiers. If thou be the Son of God, come down from the cross. Matthew chapter 27, verse 40. He was mocked by the priests, saying, he saved others, himself he cannot save. Ibid, verse 42. But he remained firm on the cross. He cheerfully died upon it, and thus conquered the world. I give thanks to God, says St. Jerome, that I am worthy to be hated by the world. Epis ad Aselam. The saint returned thanks to God for having made him worthy of the hatred of the world. Jesus Christ pronounced his disciples blessed when they should be hated by men. Blessed shall you be when men shall hate you. Luke chapter 6, verse 22. Christians, let us rejoice, for if worldlings curse and upbraid us, God at the same time praises and blesses us. They will curse, and thou wilt bless. Psalm 108, verse 28. Is it not enough for us to be praised by God, to be praised by the Queen of Heaven, by all the angels, by all the saints, and by all just men? Let worldlings say what they wish, but let us continue to please God, who will give us in the next life a reward proportioned to the violence we shall have done to ourselves in despising the contradictions of men. Each of you should figure to himself that there is no one in the world but himself and God. When the wicked treat us with contempt, let us recommend to God these blind and miserable men who run in the road to perdition, and let us thank the Lord for giving to us the light which he refuses to them. Let us continue in our own way to obtain all it is necessary to conquer all. Second point, on the means of overcoming human respect. To overcome human respect, it is necessary to fix in our hearts the holy resolution of preferring the grace of God to all the goods and favors of this world, and to say with St. Paul, neither death, nor life, nor angels, nor principalities, nor powers, nor any other creature shall be able to separate us from the love of God. Romans chapter 8, verses 38 and 39. Jesus Christ exhorts us not to be afraid of those who can take away the life of the body, but to fear him only, who can condemn the soul and body to hell. And fear ye not them that kill the body, but rather fear him that can destroy both soul and body into hell. Matthew chapter 10, verse 28. We wish either to follow God or the world. If we wish to follow God, we must give up the world. How long do you halt between two sides? Said Elias to the people. If the Lord be God, follow him. 3 Kings chapter 18, verse 21. You cannot serve God and the world. He that seeks to please men cannot please God. If, says the apostle, I yet pleased men, I should not be the servant of Christ. Galatians chapter 1, verse 10. The true servants of God rejoice to see themselves despised and maltreated for the sake of Jesus Christ. The holy apostles went from the presence of the council rejoicing that they were accounted worthy to suffer reproach for the name of Jesus. Acts chapter 5, verse 41. Moses could have prevented the anger of Pharaoh by not contradicting the current report that he was the son of Pharaoh's daughter, but he denied that he was her son, preferring, as St. Paul says, the opprobrium of Christ to all the riches of the world, rather choosing to be afflicted with the people of God, esteeming the reproach of Christ greater riches than the treasure of the Egyptians. Hebrews chapter 11, verses 25 and 26. Wicked friends come to you and say, what extravagancies are those in which you indulge? Why do you not act like others? Say to them in answer, my conduct is not opposed to that of all men. There are others who lead a holy life. They are indeed few, but I will follow their example. For the gospel says, many are called, but few are chosen. Matthew chapter 20, verse 16. If, says St. John Climacus, you wish to be saved with the few, live like the few. But they will add, but do you not see that all murmur against you and condemn your manner of living? Let your answer be, it is enough for me that God does not censure my conduct. Is it not better to obey God than to obey men? Such was the answer to St. Peter and St. John. Such was the answer of St. Peter and St. John to the Jewish priests. If it be just in the sight of God to hear you rather than God, judge ye. Acts chapter 4, verse 19. If they ask you how can you bear an insult, or how, after submitting to it, can you appear among your equals, answer them by saying that you are a Christian, and that it is enough for you to appear well in the eyes of God. Such should be your answer to all these satellites of Satan. You must despise all their maxims and reproaches. And when it is necessary to reprove those who make little of God's law, you must take courage and correct them publicly. Them that sin, reprove before all. 1 Timothy chapter 5, verse 20. And then there is question of the divine honor. We should not be frightened by the dignity of the man who offends God. Let us say to him openly, this is sinful. It cannot be done. Let us imitate the Baptist who reproved King Herod for living with his brother's wife and said to him, it is not lawful for thee to have her. Matthew chapter 14, verse 4. Men indeed shall regard us as fools and turn us into derision, but on the day of judgment they shall acknowledge that they have been foolish, and we shall have the glory of being numbered among the saints. They shall say, these are they whom we had some time in derision. We fools esteemed their life madness, and their end without honor. Behold how they are numbered among the children of God, and their lot is among the saints. Wisdom chapter 5, verses 3, 4, and 5.